Hey, Vegeta! 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 What?! Did you know we were a manga too? Kakarot! We started as a manga! Say what?! Okay, this video was not supposed to take this long. It really wasn't. When I published part 1 6 months ago, I figured a few weeks later I would have the first 4 videos out, and then I'd be waiting on the manga to catch up with me. But no, between my computer exploding, adopting 2 dogs, and general adulting, I got a bit behind schedule, and the anime actually caught up with me. But part 3 of this series is already scripted and recorded, so now all I have to do is that fun, easy, so quick editing section. That'll hopefully be up within a couple of weeks instead of a couple of months. Let's talk Dragon Ball. And, just like last time, we have a spoiler warning. These videos will contain spoilers for the franchise's anime and manga, including, but not limited to, the episodes they focus on and future developments within the Tournament of Power. When we last left off, Goku had just used the Zeno button to teleport from Beerus' world to Grand Zeno's palace at the heart of the multiverse. Already, we have some immediate differences in the two versions. In the manga, Zeno and future Zeno are sitting in their throne room, playing what looks like a game of chess using the 12 universes as pieces on the board. Neither of them are particularly enthusiastic about the game they're playing. This mirrors a scene that took place earlier in the anime, where the two Lords of Everything play something similar to marbles, utilizing whole planets as their pieces. In the anime, this scene serves only to introduce the idea that the two Omni Kings are bored, with little in the whole of creation to entertain them. However, in the manga, the two are portrayed a bit darker. This is the scene where the two Omni Gods realize that they just don't want to rule over 12 whole universes anymore. They discuss the idea of erasing all but 4 universes with the Grand Minister, whose only request is that he be given enough time to withdraw the angels from each of those soon-to-be-destroyed universes. It's worth noting that long-term, this presents a pretty major difference in the portrayal of the Omni Kings. Here, the Omni Kings are actively considering and plotting the erasure of more than half of reality with one another, whereas in the anime series finale, the Grand Minister tells Android 17 that the two Zenos had never planned on permanently erasing any of the losing universes, having expected the tournament champion to restore them with the Super Dragon Balls. This means that the threat of annihilation present throughout the anime was just a hoax, a trick to encourage the best possible performance in the tournament. But in the manga, the threat is very real. The two gods actually plan on wiping out most of creation, until Goku arrives. Appearing just after he pressed the Zeno button, the Saiyan comes into the conversation and quickly requests that the two Lords of Everything host the multiverse fighting competition first discussed during the Tournament of Destroyers. The Zeno of the present had forgotten all about this promise that he had made to Goku, but quickly agrees to the competition, forestalling the destruction of any universes. Now, as is often the case, the anime moves a little bit slower than the manga. Fans familiar with the show may remember that episode 78 sees Goku go back to Beerus' homeworld, get punished for disobeying the Destroyer, go to the Supreme Kai's homeworld, learn all about the tournament from the Grand Priest, go back to Earth to recruit Gohan, Mr. Satan, and Majin Buu for the Zen Exhibition Match, and return to Zeno's palace along with the Supreme Gods of each universe. Most importantly, the Grand Minister informs Goku, Beerus, and the Supreme Kai of the competition's true stakes. Any universe defeated in the Tournament of Power will be erased from reality. None of that happens in the manga. Instead, Goku never leaves Zeno's palace after he first arrives. The Grand Minister simply summons all of the Supreme Kais and Gods of Destruction to the palace at that moment. Despite moving faster, the manga does take a little bit of extra time to introduce some of the new Gods of Destruction in their native environments, something that we never see in the anime. Arak is presented as a wise creature, focused on meditation and inner strength. Kitela is less mature, playing a video game and shoveling snacks into his mouth like an adolescent. Hellas is vain and self-centered, requiring her many attendants to praise her beauty. Rumshi is shown to have a foul temper, furiously criticizing Gowasu for the Zamasu incident. Sidra is a very logical god, choosing planets for destruction based on statistics and mathematics, rather than random whims or emotional outbursts. Given that Arak's universe, Universe 5, ends up being a non-participant in the tournament, I find it odd that Toyotaro dedicated any page space to him, instead of giving it to the likes of Moscow or Champa, both of whom play important roles later on. But since the audience is already familiar with Champa at this point, I personally feel that these panels would have been best used by Universe 3's Destroyer, so that all of the participating Gods of Destruction had some character established, but that's just my 2 cents on the matter. Anywho, Belmod, the god of destruction from Universe 11, is given the most page space. He is presented in the midst of a party where all of the guests are adoring women as he celebrates having been a god of destruction for more than 240,000 years. When his angelic attendant, Makarita, interrupts the party, one of the women draws a knife on her and threatens her for disrupting the fun. The woman doesn't even have time to finish her threat. Belmod obliterates her just for disrespecting Makarita, who amusedly dismisses the gesture as having been unnecessary. Belmod shrugs this off though, stating in front of his remaining guests that he was planning on destroying this world anyhow. Two things about that. One, this shows that Belmod is probably the most sadistic of the gods of destruction. Wiping out a civilization as soon as you're done partying with a harem of its women is pretty cold, even for a destroyer god. But two, this also shows a deep respect between this god and his angel. For comparison, we can look at the relationships between Beerus and Whis and Champa and Vados. Beerus is often critical of Whis and takes credit for his attendant's accomplishments. Champa doesn't even have that much going for him, often insulting Vados and blaming her for his mistakes. While these relationships can be friendly, I don't think anyone would call either of them respectful. It contrasts sharply with the way that Belmod regards Makarita. Unfortunately, this isn't really explored in the anime at any point. Anywho, none of the gods except for Beerus and Shin were aware that they were being ruled by two Grand Zenos instead of one. Given how much all of the gods fear Zeno's power, they are understandably upset by this development. Champa immediately assigns blame to Beerus, a notion that is seconded by the rat-like Kitela, who cryptically suggests that Beerus is always getting the gods into trouble. This is followed by a quick introduction that I feel that the anime was sorely lacking. The Grand Minister notices that the delegation from Universe 11 has one extra person. Belmod informs everyone present of his intention to step down as his reality's destroyer god soon, and that this extra person, Toppo, is going to be his successor. Toppo is, at this time, a god of destruction in training. At this point in the story, the anime makes no mention of Toppo's status as an apprentice god. This information isn't revealed until much later, when the Pride Trooper chooses to ascend to godhood during the tournament. During my first viewing of the anime, this bit of character felt odd. It came out of nowhere and felt like a tacked-on excuse to give Toppo more power when he was fighting Frieza. But here in the manga, this information makes his long-term arc feel much more developed and more well-rounded. I really wish this tidbit had made its way into the anime from the get-go. But, given that the animators originally intended for Jiren to be at the Zen Exhibition Match, it's not really a surprise. Moving along, once all the introductions are made and the gods learn of the tournament, the Grand Minister calls for the start of the Zen Exhibition Match, a preliminary competition to show the Zeno of the future what exactly a martial arts tournament is like. Anime-only viewers will remember that the Zen Exhibition Match featured a showdown between small groups from Universe 7 and Universe 9. Goku, Gohan, and Majin Buu faced off against Basil the Kicker, the Venomous Lavender, and Bergamo the Crusher. Several bits of character development were established here. First off, Mr. Satan and Buu's relationship was explored somewhat, as the champ was the only person who could convince Buu to participate or coach him on how to battle during the fight. With Mr. Satan's help, Buu crushed Basil in the opening round. The second round, between Gohan and Lavender, was probably the most interesting, character-wise. Just like in the Resurrection F arc, we got to see just how far Gohan has fallen since his prime days as a warrior. Using all of his power and skill, he barely manages to scrape out a tie against his opponent. It's really a bit of a disappointment for Gohan fans, like me. And then, the last matchup between Goku and Bergamo involves a minor but important subplot. Before the battle begins, Bergamo ridicules Goku in front of all of the gods, claiming that it's his fault that so many universes will be erased. Their deaths are on Goku's hands. He then makes a wager with the Zeno of the present, requesting that if he defeat Goku, the tournament rule regarding universal erasure be removed. The Omni King agrees, but with one condition. Goku cannot throw the match. If he loses as a result of holding back, all 12 universes will be erased immediately. This puts Goku in a rather uncomfortable position. If he wins, he's dooming billions of lives in the process. But if he loses by holding back against a presumably weaker opponent, it will cost even more lives. Goku doesn't have much in the line of a moral compass and seems completely oblivious to this fact. The gods quickly begin to see Goku, and by extension Beerus, as the bad guy of this situation. When Goku inevitably beats Bergamo in their matchup, he unwittingly puts a target on the whole of Universe 7 for the competition. Shin and the old Kai recognize that everyone will come at Universe 7 first in the competition, out of spite if nothing else. Absolutely none of this happens in the manga. Gohan, Boo, and Mr. Satan are not present, and the Zen Exhibition Match is intended to occur between all 12 gods of destruction. Like the battle between Vegeta and Beerus from the last chapter, this is a place where I feel that the manga delivers better storytelling than the anime. While establishing a rivalry between Universe 7 and 9 was nice, it was ultimately short-lived, and the animosity that the other universes have for Goku falls away rather quickly when the fighting starts. But by having the gods fight one another, we gain valuable insight into the leaders of all 12 universes. We also learn that the other 11 destroyers already have a grudge against Lord Beerus. Several thousand years prior, Grand Zeno held a multiverse-wide hide-and-seek tournament, where the gods themselves were the competitors. Beerus went to hide and fell asleep for over 50 years, ruining the game. While he slept, the other gods had to pay tributes and bounties to the Omni King to stop him from destroying the multiverse out of frustration. And this creates an interesting parallel between the characters of Goku and Beerus. As much as Beerus ridicules and blasts Goku for being an idiot, they essentially made the same mistake at different points in their lives. And the consequences were nearly identical. By failing to take the power of the Omni King seriously, both of them were nearly responsible for the end of reality. As much as Beerus might hate to admit it, one of the reasons Goku is destined to become his greatest rival is because they are so similar. But that's just my take on the story. When the exhibition match starts off, all of the gods immediately attack Beerus. Surprisingly, the destroyer of Universe 7 is able to parry, dodge, and block just about every strike, which Whis attributes to his body's ability to think and move on its own. This is yet another foreshadow of the Ultra Instinct form that we're going to see later on in the story. Beerus is using an imperfect version of the technique, but even though his form is somewhat flawed, he seems to be the single most powerful of all of the destroyers. We also get some cool character stuff with Belmod, who takes advantage of everyone's focus on Beerus to start picking off some of the other gods. He bides his time and lets his opponents wear themselves out, and then strikes when they're vulnerable. This directly mirrors the way that his universe battles in the upcoming tournament, which is a significant detail, and a really cool, very subtle trait for Universe 11 as a whole. But suffice it to say, a matchup between 12 gods is really cool to watch. Anime viewers only got a small taste of it later, when 4 of the destroyers battle-tested the Tournament of Powers fighting stage later on in the story. Chapter 28 ends with Goku watching the battle unfold and proclaiming his growing sense of excitement. Then, Chapter 29 picks up with the battle continuing. Try as he might, Goku can't keep pace with the battle, and quickly loses track of what's going on. And, unfortunately for everyone, both of the Omni Kings do too. They quickly become bored, and the Grand Minister interrupts the battle. Future Zeno says that the matchup was boring, and decides to cancel the entire tournament. This means that the universes will be erased right away. Goku overhears this and interjects, begging them not to cancel anything. He reminds them that a battle between mortals would be less intense than a battle of gods, and that it might be more like the original tournament held between Universe 6 and 7. The future Zeno suggests that Goku show them how he fights, and the Grand Minister selects the perfect opponent, Toppo. This is actually the first place where the anime and the manga sync up since Goku arrived at Zeno's palace, but even this has some key differences. In the anime, Toppo challenged Goku after the Zen Exhibition Match was already over, so that he could compare Universe 7 to Universe 11 in terms of strength. He viewed Goku as a coward and a villain, pronouncing him an enemy of justice. In the manga, however, Toppo is presented as being much more friendly and competitive, and the battle itself is pretty different. Anime Goku vs. Toppo is presented like any other fight in the exhibition. They're allowed to fight pretty much however they like, whereas the manga introduces the rules that flying, weapons, and lethal attacks are prohibited, and that the match ends when one contestant falls out of the ring. This shows the development that the Grand Minister is considering the main tournament rules throughout the exhibition, unlike the anime, where he simply announces them after watching all of the rounds. Both versions of the fight begin with Goku transforming into a Super Saiyan. In the manga, this is the very first time that any of the newly introduced gods or future Zeno see this technique, as none of the Saiyans have participated in the preceding exhibition match. As such, everyone is awed and impressed by the transformation. Manga Zeno is so impressed that he wants to see more transformations, and Whis instructs Goku to bring out all 5 of his forms one by one. As instructed, he makes his way from Super Saiyan 1 to Super Saiyan 2 and then to Super Saiyan 3. While we all know that the jump in power from form to form is tremendous, Toppo has little difficulty fending the Saiyan warrior off. It's only when Goku becomes a god himself that he can match the Pride Trooper. which makes sense when you consider that Toppo is already a godlike mortal. Finally, Goku jumps from his god form to Super Saiyan Blue. This rapid switching of forms doesn't happen in the anime, though you may notice the similarity with the beginning of Goku's battle with Jiren, where the Saiyan makes his way through all of his forms in order to test his opponent's strength. Instead, in this fight, Goku goes from Super Saiyan 1 back to his base form, and then all the way up to Super Saiyan Blue, and even brings out the Kaioken technique. At that point, he clearly exceeds Toppo in power, and has little trouble beating him back. In the print story, Super Saiyan Blue doesn't give him an edge at all. When Goku goes blue in the manga, he attempts a finishing move against Toppo, gets blindsided, and gets knocked out of bounds almost immediately. This brings the fight to a surprising end, with Toppo as the clear winner. The anime chose instead to leave things more ambiguous. Although Goku clearly had the advantage in the fight, the Grand Minister interjected, fearful that the two might kill one another and therefore be unable to participate in the main competition. The match concludes in a draw. Regardless, the following conversation is similar in both versions. Toppo warns Goku that even though he did well, there is another warrior in Universe 11 who is even stronger, and that Goku cannot hope to defeat Jiren the Grey. In the manga, Toppo goes as far as to tell everyone that Jiren is stronger than even Lord Belmont, though that information is reserved for much later in the anime. This conversation ends Chapter 29 of the manga. Chapter 30 begins with the Grand Minister explaining the finalized rules of the Tournament of Power. The tournament will consist of a single 48-minute match, wherein 10 warriors from universes 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 9, 10, and 11 will simultaneously battle one another. Killing, flying, and weapons will be prohibited. Fighters lose by falling out of bounds of the tournament ring. Each universe will be erased immediately upon the expulsion of its final warrior. The tournament grand champion will be awarded the Super Dragon Balls as the final prize. The 8 participating universes have just under 40 hours to gather their 10 strongest warriors to participate in the tournament. With that, the Grand Minister dismisses everyone back to their home universes, and the Zen Exhibition Match comes to an end. And that seems like a good place to close out this video. This one was a lot to cover, and I really recommend reading chapters 28, 29, and 30 to get the full effect. There was just too much here to squeeze every line and conversation into one video. Feel free to leave a comment below letting me know what you'd like to see next time. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next Dragon Ball video. Bye!